Great. We'll start off with Tony Casella. I had the chance to meet Tony a few years ago when he was a guest coach for us on our summer league team, and we've kept in touch. He's always sending me ideas, suggestions, questions, and he's definitely a continuous learner who I'm excited we get a chance to learn from today. Thanks to Tony for staying up late with us. He's 13 and a half hours ahead of us on East Coast time down there in Australia. So, Tony, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thanks, Jonah. I'll just share my screen with everybody. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep, fantastic.
Yes.
Thanks, Jonah. Hi, everybody. My name is Tony Casella. I'm from Adelaide in South Australia, and today I'm going to present to you some information about Australian basketball. The agenda today, so I'm going to talk about 6 different topics. I'm going to talk about my coaching journey, the differences between Australian and American basketball, Australian coaching accreditation, my basketball philosophies, how I use analytics to make decisions, and where I see the game evolving in the future. So just before I start getting into the detail, some of my American friends tell me that Australians can talk a bit fast. So if I'm talking a bit fast and I lose you, please let me know. Okay, my coaching journey. So I've been coaching for 25 years in Australia at the following levels. So I've coached at the professional level in the NBL, which is our national league. I was a volunteer assistant there for 2 years. I've recently coached in the semi-professional league in Australia, which is in the off-season, which is of the NBL, which is called NBL 1, a club called Sturt. So I've spent the last 2 seasons there as the head coach at that club. I've also coached at state level. So for people who are not familiar with state level, basically what happens is every year all the best players from each state play in a tournament called the Australian Junior Championships, and that tournament normally gets players that get selected to play for Australia from there. So I was the head coach for 4 years for the under 20 South Australian team. I've coached at the club level, which is our domestic competition here in South Australia. So just like Europe, we have a club-based system. So we have 10 clubs in our state, and I've coached predominantly youth basketball during that time, ranging from under 12s right through to under 18s. I've coached at the school level, and I'm currently coaching my son's year 1 elementary school team at the moment. So it's interesting, different, but I coach as hard as I coach any other teams I've coached in the past. I've also coached high school basketball as well. And during my time of coaching, I've spent 6 years as a high performance coach. So a high performance coach within our national intensive training program. So that's actually a state-based academy where the best kids in the state come together for a couple of times a week and get extra training, player development. And those kids are the kids that are identified to either represent our state or even represent our country. So that was a really good experience being involved at that level there. So some of the players that you might know that have come through that program, so Joe Ingles, who plays for Utah, came through that program, and also a guy called Luke Schencher, who's also played in the NBA many years ago for Chicago and Portland Trailblazers. I spent 9 years as a coach course facilitator, where I would run courses for level 1 and level 2 coaching accreditation. Later on in the presentation, I'll break down the accreditation and what the levels mean. Just like Jonah said, if you guys have got any questions about any of the levels in Australia, please just call out. But hopefully that gives a bit of a snapshot of the different levels. I mean, over the years, I've been pretty lucky. I've been able to network with a lot of really good coaches, and obviously coach some really good players and been involved in some really good programs. And off the back of that, I've kind of been able to get some exposure at some different levels of coaching in Australia, which has been really fun. So I've been very fortunate with that. Okay, so the differences between Australian and American basketball. This is, I spent a bit of time researching this because initially I had some stereotypical ideas, but when I actually looked at the data, that thinking wasn't correct. So done a little bit of research, but I'll just present to you some of the things that I found. I mean, I can cover off the basics first. So I think one of the main differences between the two basketball countries is the youth competition structure. So and the high performance pathway. So in Australia, our competition structure is club based, like I've previously mentioned before, which is similar to Europe. Obviously in America, it is more school based and AAU based. So that's definitely a difference. And obviously not being better than the other. That's just the way that those both countries are structured. And high performance pathways. So in Australia, the high performance pathways have been pretty fixed for a number of years, and they've been quite successful. So obviously I've mentioned before, state-based academies. And also we have a national academy, which is in Canberra at the AIS, called the Centre of Excellence, which is known as the COE. We've also where the best kids from the states, from different states around Australia, get invited to go to that. And that's an academy where the kids live on site, go to school, and they can stay there for 2 or 3 years. And normally the players that go to that program are normally between the ages of, it can range from anywhere from 15 to 18 or 19. The other thing that we've got in recent years, which is really good, is at the Institute of Sport in Canberra, is we have the NBA Global Academy there, which has been going for the last couple of years. So the players that get invited there can be from different parts of the world, but the ones that are from Australia basically are identified as having the potential to play in the NBA. And had a chance to go there a couple of years ago and have a look at how those guys, what they do. And I know so that's definitely something that we do here in Australia. I know that the G League has now set up something similar to the NBA Global Academy, where they'll have the best kids from high school that aren't old enough to go to the college go there, and they can play. They play different games and get the get all the player development and everything that they need to prepare themselves to play in the NBA. So there's some of the structural differences as far as like the way competition structure and the high performance pathways are between the two countries. Now, what I did to compare the differences between the national leagues, between the NBL and the NBA, is I just had a look at a few things, in particular the rules. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but one of the things that I did notice, and after speaking to a few knowledgeable people, the competition rules in the NBA and also the NBL drive the style of play. So in particular in the NBA, with the 3-second defensive rule, where people can't spend extended time in the paint without guarding someone, that obviously takes away the help side, which creates more spacing, more driving lanes. So that is different to what the NBL has, because the NBL is FIBA rules, and you can stay in the paint for as long as you like, and that obviously changes the way that you play. So they probably rely a little bit more on more structure and more ball movement to try and shift the defense. The length of the 3-point line, I think that makes a difference from what I've noticed. So obviously the NBA line being a little bit further out than the NBL line, a little bit more than further. Obviously at the top and on the sides around 22 feet. Once again, I think having players spaced and spread out creates opportunities to drive and get into the drive and kick game and use pick and roll to try and get high percentage shots. So I think that's definitely something that impacts, has a difference on both leagues. A hand checking rule. So what I've noticed over the years, in particular with the NBA in recent times, hand checking is called, it's very tight. In the NBL, not as tight, but they still do. I think with the hand checking rules in the NBA and everything that I've mentioned before, as far as the help side being taken away and the spacing with the 3-point line, I think that really opens up more driving opportunities for players in the NBA. And you're seeing teams that are adjusting and playing accordingly. So I think, like I've mentioned before, the competition rules, they really drive the style of play. So from what I've done with a bit of research is in the NBA, there seems to be, or there is from what I've seen, a high volume of ball handler shots off of pick and roll. Based on all the things that I've mentioned above, and I'll show a table in a minute with some data, versus structure in the NBL. So obviously in the NBL, more structure because they need to move the defense more ball movement. Although they do use a lot of pick and roll, they score in a variety of ways. They still run longer offenses. They use the post a little bit more than what they would in the NBA. So I'll just show you a table with some data. So just like I've mentioned before, NBA ball handler shots off the pick and roll. So in this situation here, if you look at the top 10 ranked teams in this category, if in particular, if you look at Utah here, so 28 of 28.1 of their possessions ends with a ball handler taking a shot off a pick and roll. And with the frequency of their offenses being 28.5, that's actually quite high. And if you actually break that down, that's 1 in 4 possessions where the ball handler will shoot the ball off of the pick and roll action, which is quite a lot. And then you look at the other teams, top 10 teams, you're looking at on average 22.4%, which is quite a lot. The other thing that kind of really jumps out is the points per possession, which is quite low when you think about it. Dallas actually have the highest points per possession in this situation. So that was quite interesting. The other thing I did notice as well is catch and shoot possessions and frequency was very similar to this scenario as well, which kind of makes sense because obviously if the ball handler is getting into the paint or getting deep into the basket and causing rotations and defense to sink in, then it's obviously going to open up opportunities for a lot of catch and shoot. We'll just have a look at some video now, some situations. So NBA ball handler pick and roll shots off pick and roll. So here this time we've got Shake Milton here, nice snake dribble, attacking the rim, nice wide finish. Shake Milton again, pull up 3. Nice hit and hold screen here by Horford. And then on the drop coverage, Milton pulls up for a 3. This time we've got Lou Williams, the floater. He's got Harold selling the pick and roll, and then a nice little floater there. What we're going to do now is show some NBL structure. This is the Illawarra Hawks running a horn stagger play. Got LaMelo Ball there running the play. Got a stagger, then another stagger on the baseline. Todd Blanchfield catches and puts the ball on the deck and scores. This time Melbourne United running a pin down pick and roll. So Chris Golden comes off the pin down. Melo Trimble flares. There's a pick and roll here, and then high-low action for a score. Then we've got Perth Wildcats running flex action. So guard to guard, flex screen, down screen, flex screen, back cut, Tarico White layup. So there's just some examples of the differences between the two styles of play. So what I'll do is I'll just jump back. So the other thing that I've noticed as well is the pace. The pace in the NBA, from what I noticed, seems to be a little bit quicker than the NBL. And that probably coincides with what I've just mentioned before about the spacing rules and structure versus the ability for the NBA teams to try and score quickly off of pick and roll action.
Hey,
Just
quick
yes.
question. If you made that chart, the pick and roll chart for Australia,
That's a really good question. So I failed to mention that. Yes, so I wasn't able to gather that information, unfortunately. So I've kind of just gone by what I've noticed because that would have been good to have a comparison with the data between the both NBL and the NBA. So yes.
What do you
question.
think? Just if you had to guess, would it be 10% or like top teams?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do think it would be a lot lower. I think it would be probably around the 10 to 15% mark, only based on the fact because it's so It's obviously running longer offenses. They'll probably get a lot more scores off of catch and shoot, off of screens, more post ups, and they probably score in a variety of different ways as well. ISOs. I think they look to exploit mismatches down low a little bit more, and hit the roll man as well a little bit more. So yeah, that would be my gut feel just from what I've noticed. But yeah, I was going to mention that, but I missed out. So thanks for mentioning that. You're definitely tuned in.
And then I think in the NBA, pick and rolls obviously become more prevalent. Do
Yes.
you think that's following suit in Australia, or will it just kind of stay as more actions, off the ball?
I think in the short term, it will probably stay actions off the ball. But I think the more people understand how important it is to space the floor and to utilize pick and roll action and to get teams into rotations, I think it will occur more. I think it occurs more than it has in the past, and it probably will slowly pick up, but maybe not to the same extent as the NBA, because based on the rules as well, because the help defense can basically sag into the paint and wait for that guy.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just moved to.
If I may allow to say something?
Yes, absolutely.
Just to let you know that I know a little bit the Australian basketball. Now I follow it more because of Dan Shamir, so I follow it more because he's coaching in New Zealand.
Yes.
But anyhow, European basketball is really much more similar on that point of view to the NBA, because European basketball is, I think, 85 or 90% of the plays, 90% of the structure is pick and rolls. So it's totally different from Australia, because I see the big bodies that you have in Australia. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that it fits a little bit more Australian basketball, because Australian players, I'm talking about the local players, the domestic players, are really big guys, not too many guards, okay? And the shooting, if I'm talking about three-point shot, it's still not the amount that you see in the European or in the NBA games. Yeah? If I'm talking about, I will talk about it later, but if I'm talking about the amount of shots, of three-point shots in a game, there are some, if there are 70 possessions in a game, some of the teams in Europe are shooting now more than 30 shots from three-point shots, and it comes from pick and rolls. Whether it's directly from the pick and roll or the consequences of making the pick and roll, meaning after the pick and roll, finding the open man, etc. So if I'm talking about European and NBA, about this, European and NBA are more similar than Australian and NBA from pick and roll point of view.
Definitely, that's a good point. That's definitely what I've noticed recently with watching a lot of European basketball. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. Does anyone else have any questions? No. Okay, great. So I'll just show you the data that with the pace comparison between the NBA and the NBL teams. So I just did a little bit of research on the pace comparison. So of the top 9 teams in the NBA, in comparison to, there's only 9 teams in the NBL which I've put there. And if you have a look there, I've had to adjust the pace. Obviously, the 48-minute game being the NBA, I've adjusted it to 40 minutes because that's the NBL. They use the FIBA rules, which is 4:10, so 40-minute game. And on average here, if you have a look, it's obviously a little bit more. On average, it's 6 possessions more per game for NBA teams. They play a little bit faster than the NBL teams. So I think that's definitely stood out for me when I did my research on the differences between the two styles. Like I said, pick and roll play versus more structure, and then definitely pace. There was a few other things that I did think initially. I thought maybe NBA was more of an had more isolated possessions, but in recent times that's not the case. I mean, the Houston Rockets are at 20%. Portland are 10% of their possessions are isolation plays, but then after that, every other team was under 10. So it wasn't really anything that stood out. And initially, that's what I thought. So that was actually quite interesting when I did the research on that. Okay, so I'll move on. Okay, Australian coaching accreditation. So in Australia, we have 3 different levels of coaching accreditation. So the first one being the community coach, which is level 0. This one's basic concepts, individual concepts, so shooting, passing, dribbling, and it's aimed at parents to help their kids, and school coaches. That's obviously at a lower level in Australia. Club coach is level 1, basic individual and team concepts. So this is the level that I was running and teaching these coaches. So this is aimed at club coaches. With the basic individual drills, it would be anything for just, like I said, maybe dribbling up a little bit more advanced skills. So like coming off of screens, teaching some more of the basics in that regard. Team concepts, so how to run a basic offense, how to play man-to-man defense. So the level 1 is still fairly basic, but that's good for all club coaches to get that accreditation. It gives the coaches a lot of information so they can go out and find more information themselves as well, which is really good. Association coaches level 2. This is the intermediate individual and team concept. So basically with this one, this is where we teach them more advanced individual skills, and also with team concepts, more zones, how to run a trap, and also we work on teach the coaches how to scout properly and use video. So this is more aimed at Division 1 club coaches, state coaches, and NBL 1 coaches. The level 3 is the performance coach level, and this one is run in the IIS in Canberra. And this is for a lot more advanced individual and team concepts. So with a lot of the team concepts, that would be more international trends, and also working on strength and conditioning and psychology of basketball. So this would be this would be focused on coaches who are Australian junior coaches and National League coaches as well. So a lot more advanced level, that one. So,
Tony.
Yes.
Can I interrupt you really quickly?
Sure.
So I'm on the strength and conditioning side, and I find this model very appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the level 3, they do get some exposure to exercise science, exercise physiology. And I've always been very interested in, like, not just even basketball specific, but at least in America, when coaches from NCAA and professional, a lot of the times don't have a background in exercise science, but they're responsible for the most part for creating these practice plans. So to me, it's very fascinating how Australia integrates this. And Australia is pretty known for being progressive with that mindset in the AIS and the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. So it sounds like the level 3, can you talk a little bit, maybe briefly, just about the training they get from an exercise science, physiology standpoint?
Look, I think at that level, from what I understand, they get a better understanding. So they learn how to work in conjunction with strength and conditioning coaches. So they'll obviously get exposure to that and what works and what doesn't work, and they can go into low level detail. They also learn about nutrition as well and how that links together. But as far as them actually, I suppose, being qualified to run strength and conditioning sessions, it's not aimed at that. It's more so a really in-depth overview on how it works, how it impacts their players. But obviously talk about load management, different things like that. So that would be kind of the extent of it. But if that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
So with these coaching accreditations, they are done in each state. They are not compulsory, but they are recommended. So overall, the coaches in Australia are always hungry for information, and whenever these levels are offered, we just have an influx of coaches just wanting to do them. So I was lucky enough, like I said, for 9 years to take the level 1, level 2 coaching courses here. And it was great because you just see so many enthusiastic coaches as well, willing to learn and get better. So, the level 1 course is only a day long, but you give them information and tools that they can go away with get better and improve. The level 2 is I think it's, what is that? It's a 2-day course. And then obviously level 3 is a week. And I think the level 0 is a day as well. So although they're not super intensive compared to maybe what Europe is like, they do give the coaches some structure, some understanding of what they need to do and what level they need to be at, which is really important. So there's a good framework here for them to learn from.
Hey Tony, say I get a level 2. Does that last for a year or 5 years or lifetime or a week?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's changed a little bit over the years. It used to be renewed. I think it was every 2 years for a level 1 and a level 2. So I think that's still the industry standard. But yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of fluctuated a little bit over the years. It's not really policed, probably as strictly as it could be. But yeah, they're the general guidelines. But they're definitely tightening it up and making it a little bit more uniform across the board. All right, we'll move on. My basketball philosophy. So I'm very big on culture. I think it underpins everything you do. I think over the years I've been extremely lucky coaching in a club environment where we get a lot of these kids when they're 6 and 7 years old, and they can pretty much stay with us until they're adults and they're playing in our senior team. So be able to build a culture with kids from a young age. And we, at a club level, I failed to mention this before, but there are 2 seasons. We pretty much go 12 months a year. We have a summer season and a winter season, and we have tournaments within those seasons as well. And we don't have any restrictions on how much we can work with those players. So we are extremely lucky from a youth coaching perspective that we can work with them as much as we possibly can and really immerse them into what we think is the right way to play basketball. So that's I think that's another definite advantage of coaching youth basketball in Australia. This is a phrase I've liked to use over the years. So, it's whatever your values are. I think it's really important that it's coach-led, but it's player-driven. Over the years, I've found that's the most successful teams that I've had is, the players drive the culture, and then you're the person as the coach that leads that. And there's no better feeling when you know that that's happening, and great things can happen off the back of that. Communication for me is key. I always like to communicate with my players, and I want to know and get to know them more than just basketball players. So like I said, the amount of time that we spend with our players over here from a club level is a lot. So I get the opportunity to have ongoing conversations with a lot of our players. You get to know what they do outside of off the court, who their friends are, who their families are, who their mum and dads are, who their grandparents are, and just constantly keep communicating with them. I think that's a really good way to build up rapport and get people to buy into what you're trying to, how you want your team to play, and buy into your vision. That's critical. And communicate with people, even if things aren't going right. I think that's really important. Learning environment, constant learning through video, teaching, talking to people about what they need to do to get better, how they can make their teammates better, anything that we can do to help people get better. That's really what we say to a lot of the kids that come into our program, is that we're a learning environment. And I think if you can do those 3 things consistently, you can get great improvement, and you can get a really good experience for the players. Player development. So in recent times with shooting, ball handling and passing, I've really focused on doing drills that incorporate decision making. Reps are good, but sometimes they're not game-like, and sometimes you can get a false sense of security of what can be achieved when you do that. So I like to have a little bit of a mix and throw different decisions. So have shooting drills where they're not shooting the same drill, same shot over and over again. It might be a hand signal, or it might be some indicator where they've got to drive if you pass the ball when you step towards them, or if you got your hands down, then they shoot. So I've been really I've been really experimenting a lot with that in recent times of player development, and found that it helps a lot with improvement. I mean, reps are good, and that's probably something they can do a little bit more in their own time, but in particular, making the players think when they do their player workouts, in particular if I'm working with one-on-one or in group settings. Strength and conditioning. Now, I'm not a strength and conditioning guru. However, I've found over the years that just basic agility work is really important. So whether it's agility ladders, hurdles, skipping, core work, Pilates, whatever that might be, in particular for us, doing it as a warm-up, or having a strength and conditioning coach. I mean, last year we did CrossFit for our pre-season, and that stuff is crazy. We had guys doing all sorts of, I don't know if you've seen the CrossFit sessions before, but they are like at another level. Well, one day I'll send you some footage of it. It's crazy. So just, like I said, I think that's an important part of the game, making sure that your body is right. Goal setting, not necessarily always writing things down, but just making sure that the players know what they want to do to get to improve, and keeping that as an ongoing dialogue. Mindfulness, I've played around a little bit with this over the years. It's becoming a little bit more common in the schools now, so it's a little bit easier to sell. But really, mindfulness in its simplest form is the ability for your players to concentrate and stay focused and not get distracted. And that is a very simplistic way of putting it, and it's a very hard thing to do. And they can develop mindfulness mindset by doing meditation. So that is something that I feel like can work hand in hand with basketball as well. Just moving on, so another part of my philosophy, so style of play. So over the years, my style of play has really gone towards the Vance Wahlberg points per possession goals, which I'm sure everyone knows Vance, who's the creator of dribble drive motion. I've run this with a lot of my younger age group teams over the years with a lot of success. It's really good for spacing, getting kids to improve their shooting because they shoot a lot of volume of threes, and also get on the ring, and also takes away the complexity of trying to have multiple actions, especially while they're trying to learn the game, and takes away, too many ball screens early when they're trying to learn. Like I said, people probably are across the analytics here, but it's hard to argue with the math. So obviously inside shots are 60% and 1.2 points per possession, which is a high percentage shot. 3-point shooting at 35% seems low, but it's actually 1.05 points per possession, which is quite high in the scheme of things. Free throws, so if you get to the free throw line and shoot at 7%, 1.4 points per possession, which is amazing. Mid-range shots are obviously a little bit low if you shoot at 35%. Now, I'm not against shooting mid-ranges, but we obviously prefer, shots at the ring, 3-point shots and foul shots. I think there's, you might have players who are an exceptional mid-range shooters, or if people come off of like a pick and roll situation and the defense is in a deep drop, and they can pull up for a mid-range, and that's a good shot that they can take, then by all means, we would encourage that as well. So, and obviously turnovers being 0. So I would show my players this graphic and explain to them what it means, and it really simplifies things for what you practice at training and what you do and what you expect in games. And I found that a lot of my younger age group kids, in particular under 18s, really resonated with this. And I've had some really good success teaching the game just based on those goals. The other thing too that I'm really big on, and I've run for a lot of years, in particular with probably under 18s and above teams that I've coached, is a lot of pick and roll action. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you some pick and roll action from my team that I coached last year, and we can have a look at some of their execution. So first of all, this is some 3L key. This one's a 3-side action into a drive and kick. So just getting through some of our movement, hand off, pass back, dribble back cut, hand off, drive, catch and shoot, bang. A baseline play into a drive and kick. So this is one of our baseline plays. Just watch the spacing here. Good drive and ready to catch and shoot. Drive and kick into a light drive and layup. So just a handoff, baseline drive, 45 cut, and then just a drive and layup. Just going to some pick and roll action here. So Alex Majonia, split and finish at the rim off of a high pick and roll. Once again, notice the spacing. It really does help. CJ Rivers passes the roller. It's a bit of horns action here. Slip the first guy. And then a nice pocket pass to the roller. And the last one here is a pull-up 3 by CJ. So defense goes under. Pull-up 3. So obviously, yeah, it's one of those things where over the years I've been able to teach it better because of just through experience, but just trying to keep things really simple with our philosophy. So obviously a 3 key and a lot of pick and roll action is really the style of play that I'm comfortable with and have coached for probably the last decade, I would say. Defensively, I'm obviously a man. I really like man-to-man. I think the pack line stuff is really good at the moment. But one of the things that I've noticed out of the pack line, you can be really flexible. So we would, depending on who we're playing, we would defend different players different. So we might be in a full denial of someone who's a great shooter, or we just don't want them to have the ball in their hand. The other thing that I've done recently as well is fully deny the first pass into a team's offense and pressure the ball in the backcourt. And it takes time off the clock. So, like I said, as a general rule, probably I'm a pack line coach defensively, but it's just so flexible within what we can do. So it's very individual scout based as well. Zones and traps, I think, are really good for change-ups, in particular foul shots and out of timeouts. I found that over the years that you can really disrupt the offense. So yeah, by running some different zones and traps. So that's been interesting over the years. So yeah, pretty simplistic with my style of play, but I feel like when you keep things simple, when you've got everyone on board, and you can do great things. Okay, how I use analytics to make decisions. So this is obviously a little bit, I'm not sure how many people do this. I'm assuming a lot of people do, but for the 4 factors is one of the things that is the core of how I make decisions. So for people who are not familiar with the 4 factors, the 4 factors are effective field goal percentage, turnover rate, we've got offensive rebounding percentage and free throw attempt rate. So we've obviously got some team goals there. And then the weighting is based on if you win those categories, how much that will help you win the game. So we found that last year in particular, when we would win the first 2 categories, we'd probably win 60% of the games. When we'd win the first 3 categories, we'd probably win 80% of the games. And then if we won all 4, we'd win the game 100% of the time. So that's a really good for me. It's it just gives me some clarity. And those, I'm not sure if anyone's read the Basketball on Paper with Dean Oliver, but it goes into some full detail about these statistics and how he's come up with his weightings on how important these categories are. So yes, that's what I use as a base. And off the back of that, people would ask me, well, how will you apply that to practices into your games? So with practices, what I do is I try and design drills to help us improve our effective field goal percentage. So obviously, like you've seen before, like making sure we can get on the ring, collapse the defense, or make sure we've got guys spotting up for threes as well, and obviously using ball screen to shift the defense and get them into rotation. So the other thing that I did as well over the years is when we'd scrimmage, I would penalise the offense if they turn the ball over. So I would take away points from the offense if that was to happen, just to help with our help us value the ball and improve our turnover rate. And offensive rebounds, if we got any offensive rebounds, I'd give an extra point to the offense on that one as well. So that would encourage that kind of behaviour and habits. Applying the 4 factors to games, what we would do is obviously I would assess these categories after the games. But the other thing that we did for a little while over the last couple of years is at halftime, we would look at these categories versus what the other team was doing. And that would help us make adjustments. Not easy to do because you've got to gather the information really quickly, and you've got to have your assistants firing you with some suggestions. They might cover a number of things. You know, if the other teams they've got a really good high effective field goal, like what is it? Are they getting on the ring a lot? Are we not getting onto their shooters? So I think off the back of that, you can really identify areas where you can make adjustments really quickly. So that's what I've found has worked pretty good for me over the years. Does anyone have any questions about analytics or my philosophies or style of play? Is good, bad, too radical, too old school?
Completely. One question, Tony,
Yes.
about transition defense, your
Yes.
philosophy, because I like, personally, I like control offense. And from control offense, for example, when I play, for example, with one American team, you must very good control your offense 5-on-5 to reduce turnover. Because, for example, American team very much want to play easy basket transition from turnover. My philosophy is play without stolen possession for opponent team. Understand me?
Mm.
And for me, it's very, very important control offense and 5-on-5. Reduce turnover, and it is very important analytics for its detail, and of course for practice after game, and of course principle when it's shoot, correctly pass, correctly screen. What's his problem in transition defense and first phase or offense? First phase or offense, because eliminate turnover and eliminate opponent stolen possession. He come back and or 5-on-5. This is first things philosophy defense. I never. I cannot speak about defense without correctly transition defense and 5-on-5.
Yep, absolutely. You make a very good
I
point.
want to play 5-on-5.
Mm-hmm.
Always 5-on-5 defense
Mm-hmm.
without stolen possession.
Yep.
And it's
You make it.
we in analysis.
Yes.
Analysis, Tony, I have situation. I have problems from my horns move, feet side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm have, for example, I'm allow opponent 6 points from my feet side.
Mm-hmm.
On next practice, for example, I want one block. I want one block correction for me, for my situation, correction, and in its block, I will, for example, horn side, feet side,
Mm-hmm.
where it was problem, and from horn side, feet side, come back in defense 5-on-5. Understand me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can situation, for example, 5-on-0, come back, correct. After 5-on-5, come back in situation 5-on, and understand me.
Mm-hmm.
From this play call, feast, diamond, triangle, no important. but reduce turnover, and after
Yes.
come back in defense. For me, is most important. American selection, for example, is very typical selection for it.
Absolutely. You raised some really good points there, in particular with defensive transition. Now, Jonah, you probably know this better than me, but what I've noticed over the years, in particular in the NBA, if there's a turnover or a missed layup, it almost results in an advantage situation for the offense down the other end that either involves a layup or a kick out three. And in particular, if you saw the Warriors when they were at their best a few years ago, I would just watch, like, if even in the finals, like Cleveland would miss a shot. If they miss an easy shot, they just run it right back down their throats, and they have a number of situations. So a missed layup is almost like a turnover in a sense, because any number situation at that level, you are, you're going to get scored on. So I think valuing the ball is critical, but at the same time as well, like if you play at a faster pace and you have more possessions in the game, turnovers aren't as critical than if you play a slower possession game. So there might be a little bit of a contradiction there, but if I think with turnovers, obviously, is critical, and with transition defense, what we've told our players over the years, transition defense starts when the ball leaves the fingertips of the shooter, because then from there you
after
yeah.
miss.
Yes,
Miss,
as soon as you shoot,
after miss,
you need
after
to,
make.
yeah.
Where is problem or defense transition? What's his problem? Diagnostic, Tony. What's his problem or this or transition defense? It is very important. Analytic. Now we have a great tool, Synergy, for example. Very quickly, you can entry. You can see what's happened. Where is problem? After miss, after stolen position. Great. Very quickly. Preparation, option, see option. What's problem? Without problem.
Absolutely. And I noticed the NBA teams now don't even bother sending anyone to the offensive glass. As soon as there's a miss, everyone just runs back.
Yeah.
So Jonah, what do you guys do? Are you along those lines as well?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. And it's different team to team, but really on the release, a lot of teams 1 through 3, maybe even 1 through 4 are just sprinting back. And then the 5, if he's around the basket, can go. But if he's outside of the top, they're just getting back, because teams really want to push the pace. So, like, talking about the 4 factors, we don't really talk much about the offensive rebounding percentage or offensive rebound in general. Now, you also never want to take a basketball play away from a maybe a really good athlete who has a good knack for the ball. So you have to take that into account. But I would say throughout the NBA now, most teams are trying to get at least 4 back on most shots.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if I can't, if I coach again at a higher level, I'd probably amend this as well and probably be a little bit more conservative and send, 3, 4 guys back, maybe 5, depending on who you play. And it's obviously based on who you play as well. So we would adjust over the years. Like if there was a team that was super fast and we just couldn't keep up with them, then we wouldn't send guys to the glass. So
hey, Jonah, it's Clay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I was just going to tell you guys that my transition from the NBA to college basketball has been eye-opening to me, and Zach Hamer's on the line. I know he can probably add to this, but I've been stunned at the way people go to the offensive glass in a college game versus the pro game. When I got here with Muss again and just said, we got to get back. He said, no, everybody goes to the offensive glass. If you want to go, you go. You give them the license to go. And we had numerous opponents, and one in our league in particular, Mississippi State, that rebounded over 40% of their misses.
Wow.
And many teams were in the high 30s, and it's a completely different look. And as Coach was saying, there's, like in the NCAAs, there's much more posting up than there is in pro basketball. Like guys, like they actually run stuff to duck people in, like old school duck-ins. But along those lines, the offensive rebounding is the same. And Mississippi State had 3 guys that averaged over 2.3 offensive rebounds per game. 3. So it has been an eye-opener for me, and I've had to adjust to that.
All right, we'll move on. This is my last topic. So where I see the game evolving in the future, this is a really good question, Jonah. So this is just my opinion. So I believe in particular in the NBA, at least in the next 5 to 10, or at least in the next 5 years, maybe a little bit longer for international game. I think we're going down the track where we're going to have positionless basketball. By that I mean everyone will be able to play all positions, and most players will be able to perform the same skills, in particular shooting the basketball, which is a premium skill at the moment. You're seeing some teams in the NBA adopt this, or have in the past as well. Like obviously Houston are trying and doing this at the moment. Golden State brought it in a little bit, a few years ago in the finals. So I think that's probably where I see the game heading. Like I said, it might take a little bit longer for international basketball, because I know in particular with the Australian League, and then even looking at a lot of EuroLeague, and the bigs can shoot threes, but they still look to exploit the post, or particularly the NBL, go inside, and then obviously the college game. I think the college game is very similar to the NBL, particularly what was just mentioned before. About crashing the glass and post-ups, etc. as well. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a different style of play, and most of the time that's based on the rules of the game. Style of play, I think we're going to see more deep range 3-point shooting. So I know at the moment, in particular with the NBA, a lot of the guys are shooting 30 feet out, like Damian Lillard, obviously Steph Curry, Trae Young. A lot of those guys are shooting a decent clip. I think we're going to see teams shoot more threes and deeper threes, because the guys can. Based on what we've just talked about with the analytics, it is a good shot. Pace, I think teams are going to play faster so they can shoot more threes. They'll be able to do that if they've got players who are probably a little bit more mobile and quicker, which is where the game is going. I think 5 out will be more common as well, because it provides more space for driving lanes as well. And you'll probably see a little bit more, like some of the delay action that teams run as well, where they have a lot of pick and roll, but out of a 5 out offensive structure. And switching as well. I think if everyone's going to be mobile and switchable and strong, then I just think switching will be almost, it obviously is common now, but I think it will be more common where teams won't be exploiting mismatches as much, because a lot of the players will be obviously same across the board. I think the old school big, in particular in the NBA, it's probably going to miss out a little bit based on the way that the game's going. Quicker, faster, more skillful, more threes, more space, more switching. So that is my, and like I said, that will obviously flow in at some stage down the track. I don't know how long. Obviously, I'm trying to predict the future here, but that's where I see the game going, skill-based and a lot faster. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope you found that useful, and I'm obviously happy to take any questions from anyone about anything.
Hey Tony, that was a great presentation.
Thank
I
you.
was going to ask you about your player development, and as you're going to the future, I work with young players. I'm an elementary teacher, so like 5 to 12-year-olds.
Yes.
I coach high school basketball. So when you're talking about you're coaching your son year 1, what's your progression, or what are the benchmarks in Australian basketball? Because like I've seen in Canada, they kind of have their whole curriculum. Is Australia similar? Or what does it look like in terms of the progression from your year 1 to your guys that are going on to the state and national academies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm in the, I'm in that at the moment, like I've mentioned before. So with my son, he so obviously coaches his school basketball team. The school basketball is less structured and not as the higher level as the club basketball. But he actually also plays in the, he plays for a club as well. So I can talk to that. At the level he's at, he's obviously only 6 years old. He's the progression is very, very basic. So they will keep the kids just learning the basic skills. And what I'm trying to do, I've actually been taping a lot of my workouts with him and posting them on social media, as I've been trying to adopt a lot of decision-making drills to try and help him when he gets into games, instead of just doing mindless reps, which we'll do a little bit of as well, but we'll try and get kids to play as much as possible and not get too bogged down with great technique. I think at this level, when they're 6, 7, 8, if they can just find ways to get the ball up and you can keep it really basic. So with my son, it's keep your hand and elbow underneath the ball and then just make the shot, obviously from the block, shoot the ball off the backboard. The real simple stuff. So the progression at the moment, from what I'm experiencing, and I'm new to this as well, is as at lowest level as you possibly can go, but without over teaching. Because what I find, we get frustrated with a lot of the younger kids because we're trying to teach them stuff that they actually can't physically or mentally comprehend. So the great thing about him at the moment, he gets to play 2 games a week, obviously before lockout, but he gets to play school basketball and he gets to play his club basketball. So he plays twice a week and trains twice a week. But I find the biggest and the best teacher for kids at that age is learning by playing. So when I take the trainings, we'll do 5-on-5, we'll do 3-on-3, we'll do some quick decision-making 2-on-1 stuff. And as little as it is and as messy as it is, it helps with their development, because you can do reps and they can make shots and you can feel like it's great, and then they get out to a game and they can't get past anyone, or they don't know when to shoot or pass. Like when I was working with my son last week, we did some 1-on-1, and I talked to him about, like, if I'm playing really close to you and I'm jamming you up, which happens a lot at that level because they would just send like 2 or 3 kids to the ball, I was teaching him retreat dribble and then go. And then that was something that he could transfer to games. So I would think, I suppose, to answer your question, the progression from what I'm understanding at the moment is not over teach, particularly at that level. It's like, let them play, let them work things out for themselves. And then from there, as they get a little bit older, then when you're looking at under 10s, then 5-out principles, under 12s, it's probably can start implementing some dribble drive action with under 12s. Under 14s, dribble drive is amazing. Under 16s, you can add some screening action in. Under 18s, you can do whatever you like. So that would be the kind of progression as you go through. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, I'm still in the middle of it. I can send you and talk to you about my journey as I go along, but that's what I'm finding is it's kind of working at the moment, particularly with someone who's that young, and just keeping them. The other thing that I do as well is not overdo it. I want to make sure that whenever we finish our workouts, my son is wanting more, or he'll watch a game with me and we'll stop at halftime and we'll say, "So mate, you got to go and do something else." So he wants more. Instead of me having to push him all the time, it's him asking to go and shoot, play, watch a game. So that's kind of more self-driven than being the crazy parent who's always demanding, we do this, we do that. You've got to do this. How come you can't shoot with proper form at this stage? So, like I said, early in the process, but that's I hope that some of that stuff is helpful for you.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Tony.
Right. Thanks, guys. Thank you. If you need anything, please reach out. I'll send Jonah my details. You can send you them. So anything you guys need, please reach out, and yeah, stay safe, and hopefully we can get back to some normality soon and start hooping again.
What I'll do after is, in the next day or two, I'll send out a contact list, and then all the presenters most of their information that they share. So then if you have
Sure.
questions for any of them, you can reach out and you guys can get connected.
That's great. The other thing too, just quickly, I'll leave you with, so I've my social media account on Twitter, this is at Coach Casella. Recently I've gone on a bit of a rampage and put on a lot of, cut up a lot of footage, NBA, EuroLeague, NBL, plays, different moves, even some stuff with my son on there as well. So if you want to have a look, I've been posting regularly on there as well.
Thanks, Jonah.
Thank you.